Welcome to the Creative Me podcast. Coming to you from Guernsey in the Channel Islands. This is episode 43, Self-Care for the Self-Employed. Hello, it's Martine here. Welcome to episode 43 of the Creative Me podcast. Today I'm talking about self-care for the self-employed. I'm not just talking to people who are self-employed the whole time. I'm talking to people like me who are self-employed half of their week, or other people who perhaps work full-time or have family commitments full-time and do their side hustle business at the weekend. All of you are self-employed at some point. And what I'm going to say today isn't anything new. You've heard this all before, but I think it's a really important reminder. Let me tell you a bit about me, and I think it'll put into context the reason for this podcast episode. So I work half of my week as a lecturer at our local further education college. My job is teaching teachers. I do our initial teacher training program. I run that. And also I help my teaching colleagues use technology in the classroom more. So that's what I like to call my day job. I work all day Monday. And I work Tuesday afternoon and Tuesday evening. My Tuesday evening is my initial teacher training evening class. And I work all day Wednesday. So what that means is I've got Tuesday morning and Thursday and Friday all day to work on my own business. If I'm being really honest, I also work Saturday and Sunday. Not all day, because often there's chores to do and I need to spend time with my husband, obviously, and there's a dog to walk and all that sort of thing. But recently, it was pointed out to me that quite often I work a 7-day week, and that's not okay. And I know I'm not the only one who does this. It's not okay. We need to be looking after ourselves better. My husband pointed this out to me quite recently, and he's absolutely right. I know there'll be people listening to this who work full-time or have full-time family commitments and do their side hustle business at the weekend, and they're thinking, well, I have to work 7 days a week, what can I do? Well, in today's episode, I want to just share a few ideas, tips, I guess, about how you can look after yourself as a self-employed person. As I said at the start, there is nothing new here. It is just a reminder, and I hope it helps. First up, it's controversial. Schedule rest time. Your definition of rest is possibly different to my definition of rest. For me, resting is sitting on my sofa, relaxing, maybe doing a bit of knitting or embroidery or something like that. That's rest for me. I need to make time for that stuff. Whatever your definition of rest is, and rest isn't sleeping, by the way, although sleeping is, of course, very important, you need to make time to rest. Don't work all weekend. Next up, schedule short breaks in your day. Get away from your computer, move around, get a cup of tea, whatever works for you. If you're working in an office environment and working for someone other than yourself, you would absolutely make time for breaks, or at least you'd be way more likely to. So definitely schedule at least a break in the morning and a break in the afternoon, either side of a lunch break. I know, controversial, right? Something I've noticed that really helps me if I'm losing focus later in the afternoon, usually about 3 o'clock is the time that I start losing my focus. If I get up, go outside and walk the dog, then I get my focus back. Quite often movement is an important part of staying completely focused. Incidentally, my top tip isn't get a dog, because they can be a bit of a pain when you're working from home, particularly my darling dog who likes to interrupt me on a regular basis. Incidentally, I'm recording this podcast with a cat sitting pretty much on my keyboard. So pets aren't always the answer, but actually my dog is a really good excuse to get outside and have some thinking time, some fresh air, and just really get myself refocused. Planning your day around your best times of focus is also a really good strategy for self-care, because you maximise the time that you are working. So if, like me, you're way more focused and energetic in the morning, aim to get the bulk of your work done then. If you're more of a night owl, flip things round. As long as you're scheduling breaks and rest time, this can work really well for you. Next up, drink loads of water. I'm talking 2 litres. I have a 2-litre bottle of water sitting on my desk right now, and because I know it's 2 litres, I can gauge really easily how much water I've drunk. I want to be halfway through by lunchtime. So most of us work in a state of dehydration, and dehydration is so bad for you. It gives you headaches, it makes you feel really unwell and unfocused. So if you're not doing your 2 litres of water a day, make that the one thing you take away from this podcast. 2 litres a day is absolutely crucial. If you really don't like drinking plain water, then you can get these really nifty water bottles that you can stick some fruit in. So it infuses the water with some different flavours. So you can put fruit, you can put some herbs, stick some mint in there or some lemongrass or something. Find a way to get that water down your neck. My final tip is essentially a productivity tip, but it relates so closely to self-care, because it's all about not placing too high an expectation on yourself, and that is exercise the MIT strategy. MIT is most important tasks, or task, and this is how I do it. Every day when I'm planning my day, I give myself a maximum of 3 things to achieve. They're my most important tasks. I write them on my whiteboard and I power through them, and I get a real buzz from ticking them off. I know that's completely simple, but rather than having a to-do list with 20 things on, by focusing on just those 3 things, your mood improves. You feel that achieving something today is going to be more realistic. Don't get me wrong, you still need to have a trusted place, a to-do list where you brain dump all of the things that are in your head. You get them out of your head, you get them onto paper or virtual paper. But in terms of your day, what you're going to achieve, the MIT approach is really, really good for self-care. Those are my top tips for self-care for the self-employed. Now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, Martine, I work full-time and my side hustle happens at the weekend, you can still implement some of these tips, but I do appreciate your situation is slightly different. If this is you, I do have a couple of suggestions. Some of them might sound a little counterintuitive, but bear with me. The first one is get up a little bit earlier. This is assuming you don't have a ludicrous commute. I must remember that living in Guernsey, our commutes really aren't too bad because we live on a tiny island, but and I'm very fortunate and I appreciate that. That being said, a commute can be a good time to work on your side hustle, so swings and roundabouts, I guess. But if you can get up an hour early or even half an hour, you create extra space for working on your side hustle, and you can use that time to crack on, and then at your weekends you can do a little bit more rest and relaxation. You can recuperate for the following week. If, like me, you have a serious Netflix addiction, perhaps give up half an hour or an hour of Netflix in the evening. Again, you're making room at the weekend for rest, recuperation and relaxation. Those are just a couple of suggestions from me. I do genuinely appreciate how hard doing any form of self-employment is, and I just think we need to be a bit stricter with ourselves. This is coming from someone who has been getting it wrong, and I openly admit that I have not been looking after myself properly at all, and that's why I know that I'm not alone in that. So that's why I felt the need to do a very brief podcast about it and get myself and my own routine focused on self-care. What do you think? Let me know your comments. I'd really love to hear from you. Please feel free to share any strategies that you employ to look after yourself. What would be really great is if we could have some chat about this in the Lightbulb Club, my private Facebook group. Go to thelightbulb.club, that's what you need to type in your browser, to join us and have some discussion. Share some tips. Let's look after ourselves and each other. Wow, that sounded cheesy, but go with it. Before I go, I have a tiny bit of housekeeping. You hopefully have heard of my free online course, Achieve Inbox Zero. Definitely something that contributes to self-care for the self-employed. Many of you have emailed me to say you've completed the course and how much you've enjoyed it, which is lovely. You've also said I should be charging for it because there's so much value in there. So I'm going to listen. I'm going to put a small price on Achieve Inbox Zero in June, the beginning of June. So if you've not done the course, I'll link to it in the show notes, which you'll find at martinellis.com/43. And I really recommend you do the course before the start of June 2017, so you can take advantage of the fact that it's free. Also, feel free to tell your friends about it. Let them know they need to sign up before the beginning of June 2017. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the episode and that you'll tune in next week.